What is history?
What is Native American history in Colorado? The history of Native Americans overlaps a lot. Territories overlap with each other. Colorado, of course, was not always Colorado, so we have to consider a much larger region when we think about Native American occupation. Neighboring states, because the territories overlapped into what we know as Colorado, into Utah, Wyoming, Nebraska, Kansas, New Mexico, Arizona. So it's a very large region that we're talking about, quite a number of different tribes.
It's not a textbook.
It was the last book that was written about the Utes of the 20th century, and it was put out, I believe, in 1992. And that took folks up to a period of the early 90s, late 80s of our leadership. There's been 20 years since that book came out, and so much has happened for our tribes.
It's not a lecture.
Now, in spite of the fact that we have 40,000 Indians in the state, and we are active in a lot of areas, the fact remains people of Colorado still know very little about Native American history and contemporary Indians as well.
It's not just in our past.
I would want non-natives to know that we're still here, that we're not an object of the past, that what you see on TV in terms of a burial site being found in the state of Colorado wasn't the last Indian in the state. That we have a population, we have a thriving population.
It's all around us.
Well, my name is Ben Sherman, and I come here from the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota.
My name is Carol Harvey. I'm the Executive Secretary for the Colorado Commission of Indian Affairs here in Colorado. I'm an enrolled member of the Navajo Nation.
My name is Ernest House. I'm the member of the Ute Mountain Ute Tribe from Toyoak, Colorado.
My name is Terry Knight. I'm the Tribal Historical Preservation Officer and also what they call a spiritual leader.
Over 54 tribes occupied what is now considered the state of Colorado, but this was really not a geographic region to Indian tribes that existed in this area. The Ute Indian tribes, for example, lived within the four corners of this state, but also within what is considered Utah and New Mexico today. So tribes did not look at states as boundaries, they looked at their homelands. And so we had a number of tribes living in this area. The Navajos considered their homeland to be bounded by 4 sacred mountains. 2 of those sacred mountains are here in Colorado, the mountain of the north and the mountain of the east. And so Colorado may be a state as it's considered within the 50 states of the United States, but for the Navajo it was part of their homeland. Mount Blanca, for example, is the eastern mountain of the Navajos' homeland. And for the Navajos, these mountains were very sacred and they were very important. We have deities that live on these mountains today. The past and the future are very real for us. Dawn Youth and Dawn Girl live on Mount Blanca here within the state boundaries of Colorado.
I think people tend to forget that our American Indian culture and heritage was here long before these buildings or these concrete or these roads that were put into place. That culture and heritage have been embedded in these communities and in this ground and the rock and the earth long before we as native even got here. And so it's interesting because when we preserve and we look at things of how to preserve our culture and heritage, that's a struggle that every generation fights with, but more so my generation, because I'm the first out of 5 generations who cannot speak Ute fluently.
We can't teach people how to do these things. Yes, we can teach them and show them, but I learned from observation, from being around my parents, my grandparents, my brothers, my uncles, and doing the dance and learning the songs from them, being there with them, being associated with them. And that's how I learned it, to do these things. And I know those things to this day. But the younger kids, I guess the way you want to get them to dance or whatever is to put it in the iPod and stick it in their ear, and maybe they'll learn it that way.
You know, I think someone might think of a traditional Indian as someone that speaks his native language and that lives on the reservation. But over 50% of Indians today live in urban areas, and we are as much traditional as those Indians that still reside on the reservation. Our language is important, our culture is important, our history is important. I have written stories of my family so that my children and my grandchildren will have them, and yet I have never lived on the Navajo reservation, and yet I consider myself traditional as well as contemporary.
The persistence of tribes in the United States has been such that we today, for the most part, are able to salvage a good part of our cultures. We lost many tribes, but many have survived. We lost a lot of our cultures in the past, but many parts of our culture survive today. So we are on a path of restoration of our cultures and our traditions. And Native Americans today feel that that was one of the most important things that we can do for our people, is to restore, to preserve our cultures and our languages.
Not only here on our reservation, but generally speaking, all the reservations. But we're trying, we're doing things, we're moving, you know, moving ahead as we can, but we cannot move as individuals. We have to move as a whole. Like when the old chief said, okay, time to move camp. Just a few of them didn't move. He moved the whole group. The camp moved as a unit. And if they moved fast, that's good. If they didn't, well, you know, but there was people, the leaders that controlled that movement, going our migration routes place to place. But today, everybody's free and got their own rights, and you don't have to listen to nobody no more.
I challenged them recently to work, be a part of the ongoing process to change that stereotypical image of an American Indian. This image that you see in movies like Dances with the Wolves, or, you know, people think it's this, you know, hair blowing in the wind on top of this horse. You know, every tribe has their own distinct culture, language, and history, and never assume that unless you've lived with the community, unless you have relatives there, unless you actually engage yourself to be a part of it, and you submerge yourself with that history and knowledge to speak on behalf or for that tribe. I think that's what has gotten a lot of states and really frankly a lot of national federal policies in a lot of trouble for saying, well, hey, you know what, here's the silver bullet. This is exactly what the Native community needs. This will change everything. This will reduce crime rates on Indian reservations. This will reduce drug and alcohol abuse. This will reduce sexual abuse. But people don't understand that tribal governments and tribal systems have been going on longer than the Europeans got here. And so I think that by finally acknowledging that, coming to a consultation, sitting across the table is the best way to understand a tribe. And so I would encourage folks to do that.
The past and the future exist simultaneously.
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 The past and the future exist simultaneously.